Hello, church, and welcome to another daily devotion. This week, our topic is selfishness. You might say, well, the Bible teaches against being selfish. Well, the gift of taking care of self is how I'm going to interpret that gift of selfishness. And we go to those golden rules. Love your neighbor as you love yourself. One of the two golden rules, and love God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength. They're both from the Old Testament, by the way. They're not something Jesus made up. They're something from Torah, Leviticus, and Numbers. But the truth is, I guess I'd ask you, do you love yourself? When you think about who you are, when you think about how you see yourself, and I'd like you to do this exercise. What do you see here? And most people would say, well, I see a dot. I see that black spot. And that's true. It's the first thing our eyes go to when I hold this up for most of us. But the reality is, while there's an imperfection, 99% of this paper still has something to be written on it. This could be turned into a beautiful drawing. It could be, turned into a lot of things. It could be a letter. It could be a picture. But almost all of us will gravitate to the thing that's wrong, the thing that we regret, the things that we are ashamed of. And the danger there, when we are stuck in those places, is that self-doubt creeps in, that self-loathing may creep in, and it can be a spiritual paralysis to where you get stuck in the past and you don't allow God to free you to be present in the moment that God's trying to speak to you right now. And that self-doubt, that self-hate, that loathing, that regret, whatever it is, that baggage that is carrying you down, that I would have, could have, should have back in the past, you can't change it. So why do you let it be your prison spiritually? No, Jesus says you can't really, another way to phrase it, you can't love your neighbors like Christ if you don't have some value of who God has made you to be, if you don't have some self-love. And say, well, I'm not perfect, and I have my scars and things, I would have done differently. But my past isn't going to own me. It's going to shape how I act in the future. I'm not going to live in it. That old, Great Expectations, where Mrs. Havisham lives in her wedding dress as a slighted bride. The cake is molding, and there's mice, and everything is in the past of what her life could have been. And it's just a sadness, a tragedy, because she's never moved forward. She's never moved on to the promises of what God could make us. So when I think of self-loving or love of self, it is that owning that God has made me for a purpose. God has made me for something more than I believe is possible. And I look at every person in Scripture: Mary, Jesus' mother; Hannah, David, who's off watching the sheep; Moses, who's run away from Egypt; Paul, who is blinded by his self-righteousness; Peter, who's just a fisherman and who tells Jesus in that first moment when he realizes that Jesus is something more than just a tourist looking for a fishing trip, "Go away from me, Lord, because I'm a sinful man. I'm not the guy you're looking for. If you knew who I was, you'd want nothing to do with me." And Jesus says, "I do know who you are, and I want everything to do with you. Don't let your shame bind you from being who I see you to be in the future." I wonder how many of us have stayed in the boat and said, God can't use me. God wouldn't want me if God knew. God does know. Are you kidding me? Maybe the problem is that we know. We don't think it'll ever be good enough. No, God says, I love you. Will you start allowing me to love you enough that you start to love yourself and believe that I can make something beautiful in your life if you are walking with me. Some of us have never gotten past those mistakes, those heartaches, those regrets. Wouldn't you like to be freed of that? Be unstuck, unburdened? That's what grace is all about. A God who never says, I give up on you, but who always says there's second chances. Will you give yourself that chance today? Quit running, quit hiding, and say, okay. That's up to you. Amen.